Well, business groups today reacted quickly to Anthony Albanese saying that a Labor government would support a minimum wage claim of 5.1%, the same as inflation, to keep the workers' wages in line with that inflation rate.
What I said this morning was that no one should go backwards. The ACTU make their claim independently. We're not the ACTU. I believe the minimum wage should at least keep up with the cost of living. Labor will put forward, in government we would put forward a separate submission based upon Labor's claim. But we think no one should go backwards. People should be at least keeping up with the cost of living.
Well, you could sense that was partly in response to the ACTU's claim of a rise of $42 a week. That's 5.5%. For more on this, let's bring in Alexi Boyd from the Council for Small Business and also Willox from the Australian Industry Group. Can I start with you, Innes, because I know this afternoon that you have revised your own submission to that wage review. Just explain what you've done and why you've done it.
Well, Ross, we had to put in our final submission to the Fair Work Commission's minimum wage case today. Today's the deadline, and we take into account all the factors that are at play here: inflation, interest rates, the state of the economy, all of the factors. And what we've done is move up our proposal from 2%, a 2% increase, to a 2.5% increase. And that takes into account the latest inflation data and the fact that the RBA has moved in the last week or so on interest rates, and there is obviously more to come. So we take all that into account. What we are saying to the Fair Work Commission is that on top of a rise in the minimum wage, they must also take into account the 0.5% increase in the superannuation guarantee and the equivalent of about 1.3% in increased payments for low and middle income earners through the tax offset, which was introduced in the last budget. That gets you to a total increase of well over 4%. And that, we think, is about where inflation may well settle. It's where the Reserve Bank says it will settle. It says where the federal government says it will settle. So you've got to take those factors into account. To just suddenly say, no, we need a 5.5% increase or something like that, plus we'll pocket a superannuation guarantee, plus the offsets, means you're looking up to nearly an 8% increase in the minimum wage in total. All of that is completely unsustainable for business in the current environment. That's why we need to be cautious. You've just heard about, prospects of significant downturn coming. The stock market really in trouble. That's a bit of a peek around the corner around what business is really thinking about what might be coming 6 or so months down the track. So we need to be cautious around this at this time.
Okay, so thank you, Innes. So let's go now to Alexi. Alexi, if Anthony Albanese were to get up this 5.1% pay rise and your members, largely small businesses, would have to pass that on, what effect would that have on those businesses?
Well, look, if we look at what small businesses were saying to the ABS, in the last 3 months, 60% of small businesses have seen an increase in costs, and 50% of those businesses are already considering passing those on to their customers. So that means wages, which is the biggest input cost for small businesses right now. If that goes up by 5%, that's going to break a lot of small businesses. An increase, as Innes explained, there are already increases happening in July. We're seeing a 0.5 increase to super, and not only is there going to be an increase, but we're going to remove that $450 minimum threshold. So anybody with younger workers who may not previously have had to pay super is going to have to pay that. So that's another increase. And this is, it's difficult for small businesses to fathom that there could be another increase to their costs, as well as supply chain pressures, as well as the cost of fuel impacting their businesses, and as well as what we're experiencing already, which is, the wages are going up because of the lack of workers. There's a huge worker shortages across all industries, and that is putting pressure on wages already. For small businesses, this could be enough to break them.
I was going to say, break them. You're talking about breaking businesses. You think this is a last straw for some businesses, that they go broke as a result of this?
Well, it's going to mean that a lot of them who are under a lot of pressure and they're experiencing a lot of pressure in terms of keeping their businesses open. It's been a very difficult time. They've been through 2 years of uncertainty, and that uncertainty continues. All of the issues around COVID do continue. And for a lot of small businesses, this will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But we have got a lot of industries who are doing well. We've got small businesses who are seeing a future. So rather than speaking about, the difficulties that they're having, let's look at the future of what small business looks like now. Let's have a conversation about making small business easier. And that's what the wages conversation should be about. It shouldn't be necessarily about increases, but let's look at small businesses and how we can make it easier to hire employees and make sure that more small businesses are compliant, and then we can get the economy back up and running again.
Okay, so Ines, go back to that point about businesses being broken. Is it as serious that for many businesses these days, or really is it a case whereby Anthony Albanese here, he's not really understanding the dynamics of business in Australia right now?
Well, Ross, the way you've got to look at it is that businesses are facing enormous cost increases at the moment. We've been talking about supply chains for some time, and all businesses are part of a supply chain. And they're seeing their costs go up 50, 60, 70% for some items, particularly when they're trying to get them from overseas. So it's a very difficult time for business. They have huge labour shortages at the moment. We have inflation coming. At some point, we're going to get into a wages inflation spiral where the dog chases the tail. The Federal Reserve calls it a negative feedback loop. That's what we're about to get in Australia if we do really push massive, unsustainable wage increases down employers' throats. And it does not all go well, either for business or for the economy as a whole. You just get into this situation where we're just going to continue to push inflation up, and it becomes ultimately unsustainable for business, small and large, to keep going the way they have. It makes it hard for them to employ people. It makes them hard for them to invest. And the biggest victims of this will be the low paid and the unskilled, who the ACTU are claiming they're wanting to try to represent. What we've got to try to do is create the circumstances where they can get into work, not be pushed out of work.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. And Ines Willox and also Alexi Boyd, many thanks for your interpretation on that today. It's going to be fascinating to watch what does happen.